Good evening and welcome to the carryover meeting of the Planning Commission for February. On tonight's agenda, we have the Y Hotel on Columbia Pike, form-based code amendment as well. And we also have our Planning Commission kind of organizational matters. So thanks for everybody who's joining us here and also online or on television. That's our agenda this evening. Madam Clerk, can you please call our second agenda item?
Tonight, our meeting will start with item number 2, U-3429-16-1, the Y Hotel for a temporary conversion of up to 160 units from residential use to hotel. We have Matt Matusik and Kelsey Steffen, who is our first timer here at Planning Commission, to present this item this evening.
Steffen, Mr. Matusik, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. So this is a major form-based code use permit amendment for the Y Hotel at the Village Center, also known as the Centro Project. The project is located at the northwest corner of South George Mason Drive and Columbia Pike. As you can see in the image, it's located within the Barcroft Civic Association, but is directly adjacent to the Douglas Park and Alcova Heights associations. So the Village Center or Centro project was approved by the County Board in February of 2016. The approval allowed for the development of 365 multifamily dwelling units and 81,530 square feet of ground floor retail. The building will have 604 parking spaces, including 365 reserved and 46 shared residential parking spaces, and 111 shared and 82 reserved retail parking spaces. This site is designated as service commercial and within the Columbia Pike Special Revitalization District in the General Land Use Plan. The zoning designation is CP-FBC, the Columbia Pike Form-Based Code District, and C2 Service Commercial Business District, both of which are subject to the CP-FBC requirements in Appendix A of the zoning ordinance. So this application is requesting to allow for the temporary conversion of 160 units from residential to hotel use for a term of 2 years. While Y Hotel is operating within the building, there will be staff on site 24/7, and hotel guests will be permitted to use residential parking and building amenities, and all units will eventually convert back to residential use as the building leases out. Staff is recommending approval of this application as the hotel use is consistent with the uses permitted in upper stories of Columbia Pike Commercial Form-Based Code projects. The proposal does not involve any construction or addition of GFA. The temporary hotel use will not alter the long-term residential use of this building, and the temporary use helps achieve earlier occupancy of the building, which will also support the ground floor retail. In regard to parking, there's adequate parking for the temporary use as the form-based code minimum parking requirement for hotels is a half space per unit, which is less than the 1.2 parking spaces required for residential uses and is already accommodated in the residential parking garage. So to accommodate the temporary hotel use, staff proposes changes to conditions 29 and 38 of the approved project related to parking in the transportation management plan. These revisions will clarify that the residential parking may be used for the temporary hotel use, that the Smart Trip benefits will only apply to the residential lessees, that the parking management plan will be updated to include the hotel use, and that there will be a designated liaison from Y Hotel for transportation matters. Staff also proposes the addition of a new condition, Condition 58, that would set the temporary hotel use parameters, establish a unit tracking report, and create an on-site liaison for the temporary hotel use, operations, and compliance. To engage the community, we've made multiple outreach efforts to the civic associations, the Columbia Pike Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group, and the Columbia Pike Revitalization Organization. Both the Barcroft and Douglas Park Civic Associations have stated no objection to the application, and the Form-Based Code Advisory Working Group was also supportive of the application. No responses were received from Alcova Heights or CPRO. So to conclude, staff's recommendation is to approve the use permit amendment to allow for the temporary conversion of up to 160 units from residential to hotel use for up to 2 years, subject to all previously approved conditions, amended conditions 29 and 38, and the new condition 58.
Thank you, Ms. Steffen. Does that conclude staff's presentation?
It does.
Thank you. Now I'd like to turn it over to the applicant for your presentation.
Good evening, Chairman Schroll, members of the Commission. My name is Phil Dales, Walsh Colucci, here on behalf of the applicant. And I have with me from the applicant, Mr. David Orr, and from Y Hotel, Jason Fuden. I think the Commission is familiar with this project, and Kelsey's done a wonderful job in summarizing the application as it relates to the project. So we'll keep it brief, and I know that you're also familiar with Y Hotel at this point, and so we'll just summarize the way that this project is going to be incorporated into that Y Hotel's use will be incorporated into this project, and answer any questions that you might have about the temporary hotel use. As Kelsey said, it's a 366-unit project, and only 160 of the units at a time would be used for the Y Hotel temporary hotel use, with those floors beginning with floors 3 and 5, and then moving throughout the lease-up period. I think the key aspect of what staff has conveyed already is that this use will support the retail components that in the early stages, as those retail uses are coming online. And so in facilitating these these uses in the early stages of the development ensures that the earlier success of the development as a whole. The parking uses are much less, and Y Hotel estimates that about 1 in 5 of its guests actually even need overnight parking. So there shouldn't be any additional demand for the use of these 160 units as hotel use during the 2-year period. And so with that summary, I think I'll pass it to Jason Fuden to talk a little bit about Y Hotel's model, though you've heard it a little bit already in past meetings, and then answer any questions the Commission may have.
Good evening, members of the Commission, and thank you for having us tonight. My name is Jason Fuden. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Y Hotel, and obviously a lot of familiar faces as we were here about 4 weeks ago. So I will keep it brief, but still for everyone here, run through who we are, what we do. Instead of kind of going through details of Centro or Village Center, I think that was covered by staff. So instead, excuse me, so instead I'll just run through who we are at Y Hotel, what our model is. We call it, so Y Hotel is an Arlington founded company, and we operate short stays in multifamily buildings during lease up. Essentially, we make use of otherwise vacant apartment inventory during a time that's otherwise inefficiently used because it's vacant. What we do is we furnish a number of units in the building. We hire, onboard, and train a 24/7 hospitality staff, and then we have short furnished stays for guests during lease up. As the building fills with long-term residents, we slowly wind down our position and then eventually leave. We return those units in the same rent-ready condition we received them, so the developer is in a position to have long-term residents move in ASAP. And our track record is we leave pretty quickly when things go well in Arlington. At the Bartlett in Pentagon City, we were there for just shy of 5 months. And on site, the guest parking for the Bartlett was about 20% of our guests parked, as covered before, and so that's kind of well below the parking ratio that you'd see in this building. Our average length of stay is 3 to 6 nights. We see kind of 3 types of travelers generally. We see a lot of the Monday to Thursday reoccurring business traveler where they're basically living here but not, so it gives them a home away from home. We see folks traveling with their young kids, so they're able to put kids in a bedroom and have a shared common space and a washer dryer and a fridge and freezer. For anyone with young kids, I'm sure you can appreciate that. And then we see folks that are staying for a little bit longer near hospitals like doctor residencies and kind of those longer 3-4 week stays. The way the program works is we have one floor that is our sky lobby or check-in unit. That's a 2-bedroom unit that our staff is at 24/7. When people arrive, that's where we check IDs and give them their keys and tell them, hey, we're your 24/7 on-site team. Come to us with any questions. We take a second unit off, also a 2-bedroom for our back of house. This is where we have our employee lockers, break room, and that's where we stage linens, terries, amenities out of. In terms of the process for our guests, they can book us through any number of digital channels or just call us 24/7. We get a fair number of calls, at least as we've established the brand. People want to make sure that we're real. We are real. And then when a guest books, they get a confirmation email, and we give them instructions to access the building. When they arrive, they come to that Sky Lobby check-in unit, and then that's where we have them sign a license agreement. We ID everyone who's 18 or older, both if they're regardless of whether they're the person checking in or they're a guest of that party. And then any other guests that come on site are also required to provide ID, so we know who's in the building at all times. As I mentioned, we're still a fairly young company. We've done a couple other pop-up Y hotels. So our first was at the Bartlett. This opened in January of 17 and ran through May of 17. And we did just over 4,000 room nights in that time. We opened downtown Baltimore Inner Harbor last summer, and that one is still cranking. And that one is across from Mercy Hospital, so we see a lot of things associated with the hospital, patients or families of patients, and a lot of traveling nurses, and then kind of family getaways with Inner Harbor. NOBA, which is our downtown DC location, we see a lot more things associated with the U.S. Capitol. And we also see a fair number of international travelers who are staying in New York and decide to take the train down and explore the city for a few days. That's us in a nutshell. I'm happy to get into any further details, and thank you again for having us.
Thank you, Mr. Feuden and Mr. Dales, for your presentations. Now we'll go to public comment. No public comment, Madam Clerk? Okay, so we will now turn it over to Commissioner Hughes, who's the chair of our form-based code working group, for your presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. The form-based code working group heard this matter on its January meeting. I'm going to sort of summarize the three major areas of conversation that we held and the applicant's response, just to go over it. If you covered this in your January meeting, I apologize to my colleagues for not being there. ADA conversions was a big concern of the members. The applicant was very clear and articulate on how they're going to convert and make available ADA units, and more appropriately how those units will return back to their normal use and be available to the existing building to be converted to ADA if they became necessary. So they were very satisfied with that response. In addition, there was a question about whether long-term lease-up. The neighbors, of course, hope to have long-term neighbors. We want Mr. Orr's building to be leased up faster than anybody anticipates, like the Bartlett, and what would happen in that situation. And we were informed quite clearly that the long-term leaseholders take precedence. So if a lease-up occurs faster than anticipated, ultimately the Y Hotel will leave sooner than anticipated, which we were all sad to see you leave, but understanding that we'd like to see long-term neighbors. The other really important thing, which I think was really impressive to the OG members, was a question about how do we know that you're only going to be here for 2 years, that this is not going to become a long-term event. And what was made clear to us is not only how important it is to hold that commitment here, but how important it is for Y Hotel as a business risk to hold that commitment everywhere it goes, so that when it says it's 2 years, it's 2 years. So I think that was very well said, and we appreciate that, and made clear to all of us that there's an outside business risk with respect to extending beyond the 2-year time. That was the sum total of the OG's questions, besides a great deal of happiness to see you coming and an excitement for the community. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Erlin, tell me, this did not come to Transportation Commission, did it?
No, it did not.
Okay. And do we have any representatives from any other commissions here tonight? Okay. All right, the matter is now before the commission, so it's open to commissioners if you have any questions. Commissioner McSweeney.
Thank you. I apologize if it's in the report. I just didn't see the number of accessible units that are actually going to be available during this period. I know there are 160 units. There's a percentage, right, that you have?
That's correct. There's a building code modification package in now as well, and part of that package shows the 4 accessible units. They should be included with the plans in the staff report. I think there are.
Yeah, so, sorry, there's 5 units that are modified for accessibility in the pool.
5? Okay.
And there are 2 other units on those plans that indicate the units that will be used for front-of-house operations and back-of-house.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes, and then Commissioner Steinberger. No, Commissioner Hughes first, and then Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. I did want to point out to my fellow commissioners sort of a positive aspect of this development that I don't think is really recognized either in the staff report or in any of the previous matters that were discussed. In this case, the Y Hotel is going to be able to experiment with a hotel use in an area that's otherwise not have an experiment. What that will do, in my mind, is provide the information and data necessary to support future development potentials of unbuilt sites in that area with uses that we may not currently know are attractive at that point. So I think that that is something that we should all think about as we see this Y hotel use come in areas that we may not otherwise think of as a hotel use. As was said by staff, the form-based code does allow a hotel use all along the Columbia Pike corridor, and I think this is going to be an incredibly successful hotel because of the Foreign Service Training Center and the connection you have there with the private shuttle to the DoD complex. So I look forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes, Commissioner Steinberger, and then Commissioner Siegel.
Thank you for your presentation. First, I'd actually like to align myself in a strong agreement with Commissioner Hughes' comments. I think that's a really fascinating point and something that would be a real sort of ancillary benefit to the project. And then I had two questions. Could you break down, so the units that will be used for the Y Hotel usage, could you break down the size of those units by type just to get a better sense?
Yeah, so we follow the unit mix of the building because we start with whole floors. And if I don't know if we have them on hand, but if I recollect correctly, I think it's about 65 to 70% ones, probably about 25% twos, and a mix of one and dens in there.
And could you speak from experience what type of unit is the most common to be used for hotel usage? Or I know you listed a variety of types of travelers, so it may not.
Sure. So it actually depends on the micro submarket and who needs to stay there. So we find that business travelers tend to have a preference for one-bedroom units, while people that travel with groups like family and friends tend to have a preference for the twos. People that travel with children, if they're on a budget, like the ones, and if they're less of a budget, prefer the twos. Every unit comes with a queen bed both in the bedroom and on the sofa, so each has at least 2 queen beds. So most unit types accommodate most groups.
Thank you. And sorry, my other question was, if the property leases up faster than anticipated, what would happen to pre-booked hotel stays that might have already been in place for that time period when the hotel uses no more?
Sure. So the way our agreement is structured is there's a rolling period of time where we're told they need units back, and we keep a certain vacancy buffer, so there's always units to be leased. And so we won't take reservations further out than when we know we'll be in the building. And so that way we prevent ourselves from having a situation where there's someone who wants to move in, but there's a guest who's already booked it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steinberger. And I don't know if you have this printout, but it does. Well, I'll pass mine down to you, but it does answer the question that you asked, Mr. Feuden. Commissioner Steinberg. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Siegel.
That's quite all right. I have 2 questions. Can you describe the elements in the accessible units, what makes them accessible?
Sure. There's a number of physical changes that are required. So one are grab bars around the showers. It is a removal of furniture under the water features like the sinks and the bathrooms. And then we include at least one unit with a roll-in shower. Otherwise, the units as type A units already have lowered countertops and a number of other items that would be required.
My understanding was that the accessible unit, whether it's for a hotel use, I guess there's a difference. A hotel use or a longer-term lease use needs to be accessible, has to have a roll-in shower. Is that correct?
So the answer is it's more confusing than not. So there's different use categories. Arlington County's interpretation of our use is an R2 use with a code mod. An R2 use is what an apartment building is generally built to, and the accessible requirements are based on fair housing. And so there's an R1 use is what a hotel is built to, and so it's a little different. And so what we do is we bridge the gap by making physical changes to the type A units.
My question is the roll-in shower, and to be frank, the reason I ask is that I happened to see a former commissioner, Rosemary Ciotti, who was very, very focused on issues of accessibility, and she had a concern that type A units were not, some of them had been built with bathtubs, whereas her understanding was that they should all be roll-in showers. And I just wanted to verify with you whether that is the case or not. That was the...
Yeah, so that's not the case. So a type A unit is not required to have a roll-in shower. On this particular project, the developer opted to put in roll-in showers. On our Ballston project, we are retrofitting a single bathroom with a roll-in shower at no small expense. And so we just, that's kind of been our process.
Great, thank you. And my second question has to do, I guess, with your business model. As Commissioner Hughes mentioned, it's an interesting, exciting business model. It helps you lease up. It enhances the livability, and it activates the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. So generally, it's quite important. When you start, I guess my question is, over time, might you see, this is, I won't hold you to your answer if I see you in 2 years, but over time, would you imagine that that a temporary hotel use might expand into other areas, unlike a brand new apartment building that would inevitably have a long or longish lease-up term? The question gets to the issue that was raised, I think, by Commissioner Gearan and others at our previous meeting on this subject, concerning a conflict with market rate affordable housing and things like that. I don't think I entirely
clear as
mud. What I'm saying is, as Commissioner Hughes suggested, that he might look forward, and correct me if I'm wrong, to the expansion of this sort of business model to other areas. And I was wondering, does that make sense to you? I mean, it seems to me you really have confined yourself, at least so far as we've seen, to new apartments that are experiencing a longish lease-up, and it's an appropriate complementary use for that. Do you think you would be expanding into other kinds of
I understand
properties? That's what I want to know.
So our company today only runs temporary furnished apartments and lease up, and it's because it's inefficient to have them otherwise.
Right.
In doing so, we learn a lot about customer needs and wants, and so there's products like AKA in downtown DC that are buildings that are made up of dwelling units that are furnished, but that are hotels of apartments. And so that type of product exists in other places. It's normally in the most core urban locations and is not normally seen kind of further out. What you're more apt to see is traditional corporate housing like in Oakwood that signs 30+ day furnished. But the entire world of furnished apartments in lieu of just small extended stay hotel rooms is kind of evolving. And so one of the benefits we get as an organization is because we're making use of otherwise empty inventory, we get to start to learn about how different people like and use space. So I would say I wouldn't preclude us from kind of tackling other business models as the world evolves, but for now we have a focus on these otherwise empty units.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Commissioner Scholl. I just want to follow up to my commissioners to make sure it was clear. My hope and my real sort of goal, Commissioner Siegel, is with the applicant choosing to put a hotel-ish usage on this site, we might see if the market supports a hotel, perhaps at a non-undeveloped site currently, which is really where I was trying to go at with that comment. The data will now be there for the bankers and the investors to see whether or not a current flat surface parking lot may now be a suitable hotel.
Thank you, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner McSweeney.
Thank you. I had heard that at the last time you had appeared at a county board meeting, one of the county board members had asked if Y Hotel, within the period of time that you are, in the building, if you would be open to working with, say, some of our nonprofits who help house people who are victims of domestic violence or survivors of domestic violence. I didn't get the benefit of hearing your answer, though, so I was just curious. Is that something that you could support in your business model?
Yeah, so we're definitely open to exploring it. We actually were supposed to have a meeting tomorrow morning with the head of Doorways, but it's got pushed out a week or two. But yeah, we're exploring that. I mean, to the extent that we can have a positive impact in a way that's respectful of the buildings and their security and safety, we're totally up for it.
Great, thank you.
That's certainly good to hear that, Mr. Fuden, and I think there was also some folks here, and Commissioner Siegel kind of raised this, who were expressing some interest in affordable housing and transition from, affordable housing projects that are going offline. So we would encourage you all to maybe have some meetings with our affordable housing developers here in Arlington, as well as some of the other nonprofits. So that's good to hear. Yes, Commissioner Patel.
I just want to kind of bounce off a little bit of Commissioner McSweeney's comment and extend it to beyond survivors of domestic violence and include other vulnerable populations. That would be included in something that you would be willing to look at as well, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we're to the extent we can have a positive impact while not having a negative impact on the resident experience and the guest experience. We love to be able to give back to the communities that we operate in. So totally game for any of those things.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there other kind of questions, comments? All right, Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you, Commissioner Schroll. I move the Planning Commission recommend the County Board approve the use permit amendment to allow a temporary conversion of up to 160 units from residential to hotel use for up to 2 years, subject to all previously approved conditions, amended conditions number 29 and 38, and new condition number 58.
Second. Seconded by Commissioner Nolan-Telmy. Any discussion? Hearing none, the question comes on the motion by Commissioner Hughes. All in favor? All opposed? All right, unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Fuden, Mr. Dales. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Ms. Steffen, Mr. Matusik. All right, we now move to the business meeting and the organizational matters of the commission. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the January 14th meeting? Yes, Commissioner Morton.
Approve the minutes of the January meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Morton. When you speak in the future, if you can speak into the microphone, that would be good. But thank you, Commissioner Morton. Is there a second?
January 14 or 16?
That's a good point, Commissioner Ricks. It should say January 16. You are right. I'm looking at the agenda and not the actual minutes. So yes.
Should we redo that?
Yes, Commissioner Morton, if you would redo. Good catch, Commissioner Ricks.
I move to accept the minutes of the January 16th meeting with the caveat that the date should be changed from the 14th to the 16th.
So I don't think the date is wrong on the actual minutes. I think it's just a typo in the agenda we have before us. So we have that motion. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Commissioner Patel. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Commissioner Hughes abstains. All right. Ms. Bowling, do we have any staff reports this evening?
Nope, no staff report.
Thank you. All right. Our site plan review committee chair is not here with us this evening, but we do have a few updates. I want to pass it over to Commissioner McSweeney for an update on Best Western.
As you recall, we do have an open SPRC with the Best Western / Red Lion Hotel. In that development, we were originally going to see it, I think, at this meeting, and it was then pushed off to March. I understand now that it's going to be coming before us in April. My understanding is that they're still working out a few of the issues, one of them being the affordable housing. And I understand that the building is now a condo instead of apartments, and so I think that changed the discussion.
All right, thank you, Commissioner McSweeney. Any questions for Commissioner McSweeney? Yes, Commissioner Ricks.
I was curious if there's been any movement on the ability for residents of that project to use the I don't know, I think it's the North Road, but I can't remember what that road is called. And if there's any,
The one that's considered the private road,
to the condo, yeah.
there is none because there was a prior agreement in place, I think, that the county had with that building. So there is no, there's not going to be any change to that road as a result of this. I guess I would just, the other outstanding issue, I think, was the park to which the benefit was going to be applied. And the park is actually across Arlington Boulevard. And the immediate residents were interested in perhaps improving the park that's actually right there, too. So I think that's an ongoing conversation as well.
Yes, Commissioner Hughes.
Sure. Commissioner McSweeney, do you anticipate having another SPRC, or do you anticipate us having a wonderful PC instead?
Funny you should ask that. I actually reached out to our planner on that question. The feeling was that because this is going to go before the Housing Commission and come again before the Planning Commission, that we would not have another SPRC meeting. And as you recall, we did have another one on the books, but we had canceled it because we knew that we weren't going to get these answers in, I guess it was November. And I anticipate they still don't have the answers today. If it turns out that there are a lot of changes, I might ask again for us to have an SPRC. At any rate, I will ask for us to update the members of the SPRC by email and of any changes or decisions that are made.
All right. And then the Harris Teeter site plan was supposed to kick off this month, but it got postponed until March. So the first date on that is now, I think, March 25th. But stay tuned. It seems like the applicant keeps pushing things back, so it remains to be seen when that will actually start. All right. Yes?
I jumped ahead if you anticipated you will call for long range now, or is there another site plan?
Yes, I will call on long range.
There's a site plan.
Another?
Oh, yeah.
We have Washington.
Sorry.
Sorry, 11.
Washington Kirkwood is ongoing. We had our first SBRC a week or so ago. It went well. A good number of questions were generated that the developer is now looking into. We'll have our second meeting on March 11th, and we anticipate a third one in the latter half of April. We're hoping that 3 should do it. You know, we had a lot of interest from both Lion Village and from Boston, Virginia Square. A good discussion. A number of issues have been identified, which the developer is actively, and staff are all actively working on now. And I think I expect it'll move ahead nicely.
Yep, we had good PC attendance too, which was good to see. Yes, Commissioner Siegel.
Yes, I did not bring it with me, so I can't tell you precisely which concept reviews were held, but I noticed in the latest update of what's out there in terms of preliminary and final SPRC applications, there were 2 concept reviews that were concluded. I wanted just some, I don't know if Ms. Bowling can report on that, and I think I see Ms. Smith is not available, but I wanted to know what that meant, concluded. Oh, do you know?
Yeah, I can let you know. So that just means that staff concluded their analysis of the concept plan review, and the report had been issued to the applicant. So that's what that means on the checklist. Or
good. So that means there is a report that is either public or could be made public on those reviews. And I know earlier planning commissioners were very, very interested in seeing that result. The more we know up front of what the discussion has been, I think the better we can weigh in.
Yeah, and I think, as I think we've discussed with Mr. Schreiber before, if a plan comes through that's actually filed for those projects, then the concept plan report will be posted on the project page.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
There's anything that's actually filed.
Okay. And at that time, it will become public. Okay.
Right.
And that's true for the Harris Teeter. That's I believe, already public.
Yeah, I think that one is, and then there's one up for APA. American Legion had one that's up on the webpage.
Great. It's easy to miss those things. There's a lot on the webpage. I did have one other thing, just to request I make a couple of remarks about POPs, but whenever you'd like to sandwich that in, that's fine.
Sounds good. We have a few of those updates.
Afterwards?
Yes.
Okay.
In addition to a few other things. So our long range and ZOCO chairs are not with us this evening. We're 0 for 3 on commission subcommittee chairs this evening, but let's see. There will be a joint, my understanding is there will be a joint ZOCO LRPC meeting on the 20th, so a week from today. So kind of flag that for you all. A portion of that is to go over kind of the update to the special GLUP process. That has been, my understanding is the staff concepts on that have been scaled back, mostly down to just updates on fees, kind of holding the rest of it, but more to come a week from today. Both Commissioner Weir and Commissioner Giacomini have been working with staff on having a brainstorming session on February 19th, so this coming Tuesday. Just kind of hold that date. We haven't noticed the meeting yet. We're still working with staff on sort of what that looks like, but please hold that time. It would be 7 p.m. in this building, obviously. It would be a chance for us to kind of, as commissioners, to talk about things that have come up with other site plans, other processes, but that kind of got tabled and we didn't have a fulsome discussion on, but want to revisit. So this is not an opportunity to talk about things that are coming forward. This is not a chance to talk about Amazon. This is not a chance to talk about Harris Teeter. It's really a chance for us to say, hey, remember when we did this on this project? Is there a way for us as a planning commission to think about what that might mean going forward, kind of hypothetically, right? But not, again, not attached to a single site plan. So, or a single project, perhaps. It might be something with long range, but just, again, we're still trying to figure out what that looks like exactly and trying to work with staff on properly noticing that meeting, which is kind of a struggle with the county attorney, since it doesn't have
a substance
or boundaries around it. So that's kind of the challenge we face. So stay tuned. Any questions about that kind of broad brainstorming topic on Tuesday, if we have that? Yes. You're looking at me? No? Okay.
I do have a...
Yes, Commissioner Siegel.
I think I just...
Like you had a question formulating, but Commissioner Siegel.
It's not a question. It's just at the end of, I think, Commissioner Guerin's term as ZOCO chair, she had encountered a number of citizens who had zoning issues that were not taken up by staff. So they weren't in the staff work plan. So we created, at that time, a parking lot for those issues. Is that something you've been looking at as you think about the brainstorming?
So I'm not trying to get ahead of the brainstorming. So this is really an opportunity, I think an initial opportunity for us to think about the litany of topics that are out there and then see whether we should have a more fulsome discussion at a future meeting about some of these topics. I know Commissioner Lantelmi has thought about this as well and has had discussions with Commissioner Weir.
The genesis of this was actually a thought that I had, and I actually talked a little bit about this with Chris Slatt from the Transportation Commission, was that often when we get together, two of us at a time, we'll end up having very interesting open discussions about planning issues that are going to be confronting the county or just in general, and they're really good discussions. But we can't do that as a body. We can't do it when there's three of us together. But all of us are interested in these things. We have a lot of, and all of us bring different ideas, visions, questions to the table that we can't really flush out when we have a structured meeting. The idea is to give us a forum where we could have a more open, wide-ranging discussion where we could just talk. It doesn't have to have a specific agenda, but it is forward-thinking. What are issues we think would be emerging, things that we should be thinking about? And this is also to give give a heads up to the county board These are emerging issues that we should be thinking of, staff may be able to be thinking of, because we do like to have those conversations. We've all done it. And there's nothing wrong with doing it in public. In fact, it would be, I think, good for the public to hear the range of ideas that we have. So that was the genesis of this, and other commissioners have jumped on it and like it too.
We've done it, and we've also refrained from doing it when a third person has joined the conversation.
Right. So that's sort of what we're trying to achieve. Yes, Commissioner Ricks.
Is the agenda for Tuesday's meeting to deal with issues that have already been raised, or can we add some new ones?
You can certainly, so you can certainly add things that we have not previously discussed. That's certainly part of the point. I think the guidance we're getting from staff is we should be talking as we're raising issues about projects we've already discussed and not about projects that are coming to us in the future. Because if we talk about something that's coming to us in the future, that likely wouldn't have been part of the notice. So we should all refrain from saying, when we do net 6, we shouldn't do that kind of thing. But we can certainly say, on the APA project that we just concluded, wouldn't it have been nice if thing X? Or this thing came up as part of that site plan and we parked it because we didn't have a way to deal with it. Shouldn't we think about ways to tackle issues like that?
Does it have to be project specific, or can it be more general to the zoning code?
It can absolutely be general to the zoning code.
Or zoning ordinance, yeah.
That was the idea.
Okay.
So it can be long-range issues, zoning, site plans, LUP components, Commissioner Wharton.
That was my question as well. And if some of the issues we anticipate, they might have something to do with Net 6. I mean, do we need to just not mention the project, or?
Yeah. I think that you need to keep your comments higher level than specific, and then I think it'll be okay and not run afoul of our notice requirements.
Sector plans, area plans, all that would be fair game.
Anything we talk about as Planning Commission, as long as we're not talking specifically about future projects. Okay, that's coming hopefully Tuesday to a community near you. All right, Commissioner tell me, update on PFRC?
Yes, PFRC, we do have things coming up this year. The first project that we will be considering will be Fire Station 8. It looks like it could be coming up in March for the first meeting for that. We don't have it nailed down quite yet, but that's what we're looking at. Further out into the year, we would have the Career Center will be coming up. So we'll probably have that in the latter half, probably the fourth quarter of the year, maybe that far out. All through the year, there'll be continuing Ed Center issues, whether it requires a PFRC, we'll see, but that is still not finished. He's going through his process. So that's where we stand with PFRC.
The school board should take action on the Ed Center PFRC schematic design next week. So, all right. Commissioner, do you have anything on the queues?
The OG did not meet. The form-based code OG has not met, and we've just discussed one of the most recent things. So
great. All right. Commissioner Siegel, update on POPs?
Yes, I sent an email out, so I'll just slightly embellish that email. As you know, I was a member of the working group. The working group has been in existence for 2.5 to 3 years. Also, I was representing Planning Commission, and Commissioner Guerin representing Parks and Recreation Commission, which she was a member of for a very long time. Generally, the document is, I think, felt to be by even its critics extremely valuable. I say that because the additional work that's being done is being done in response to a lot of pushback from the CivFed group, and also Williamsburg Lighting Group, the working group, and other citizens. And there will be some major changes, significant changes We're still looking at a level of service based on population as the framework for evaluating what our current services are, what our current amenities are with respect to both a national average and for particular cities that peer cities that we compare ourselves to. That will be in place. The county manager sent out an email. I think you've all seen that. The other major change will be in the way the field light point system is deployed, used, arrayed, set forth in the document. While public comments had been formally closed, I think staff on those two very difficult issues is open to real input. There will be a meeting on the 19th in the morning at 8 o'clock where staff who has consulted with Elizabeth and I in particular in conjunction with Carolyn Haynes, who was the citizen co-chair of POP's PSMP working group, as we've sort of tried to take some of the critique and frame it in a more constructive, positive way. So I'm very proud of that. I think that's will make a real contribution to a comp plan element. And I remind commissioners that as planning commissioners in Virginia, in the Arlington way, of course, we are the keepers of the comp plan. They're meaningful, they're very meaningful to us. The GLUP, I think, is the one we know more intimately than anyone else. And we want to make sure at this stage, once we get through the changes to the way the LOS and the field lights criteria are deployed and explained in the document, we want to be thinking about how, as time goes on, we'll be weighing in as planning commissioners on site reviews, whether it's use permitting, even 2232, which is something I think we might want to think about. And I'll leave that for later, but I'm trying to pique your interest. It's a very big document, it's long, it's complicated, so I'm hoping that my study guides and various suggested questions have helped you. I know you're all very, very busy, and I appreciate that. But if you have questions, call me, email me, and I'm really happy to talk about it. And I do promise after this working group meeting to give you an update on what happened.
People have their phones next to the mics. That's what causes the feedback. So encourage commissioners like Commissioner Hughes to remove his phone. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Lantelmi, update on Lee Highway.
Yes, the Lee Highway planning process is underway. We had our first meeting the first non-public meeting was held in late January. It was for the working group members appointed by the county manager and the county board. We had our first public meeting last night, and that was very well attended, especially impressive given that it was a cold, rainy night. We had a very good turnout by the public. We had a series of exercises. We had 12 different stations of different topics that will be covered, and it was to get feedback. It was to get people's impressions. We gave sort of the planning principles for the Lee Highway corridor and get people's reactions to them and what they like, what they don't like, what they want, what they don't want. And it went very well. So we're off to a great start, I think. We do have the contractor, it's ACOM, with various subcontractors, but they're in place, and it's their local office. So the people working on it are from the area. So they're already up the learning curve that way, which is nice.
Could you say the name of the contractor again?
AECOM. AECOM.
AECOM, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Based in Clarendon. So it's, yeah.
They're national.
Right, it's a national company, but it's the local branch got the contract. So that was really good. So overall, we're off to a great start. Paul Holland is the chair, Sandy Cesarone is the vice chair, and Natasha Alfonso Ahmad is the staff lead on it. And we have representation from all the major commissions, in addition to quite a large number of people on the working group, shall we say. Right.
Commissioner Montalmi. Yes, Commissioner Ricks.
Jim, does the Lehigh Way Quarter include everything from Fort Myer Drive all the way out to Falls Church? It's the entire span?
Yes, it's 14 civic associations, the businesses, the property owners, all of them, and it's roughly a quarter mile on either side.
Okay.
There's actually a defined boundary for the study area, and it's online on the, you can see that, but it's roughly a quarter mile.
And is there a timeline for the end?
3 years, a 3-year process.
Any other questions for Commissioner Montalmi? All right. Thank you for your service on this working group. All right. If there are no other kind of report outs, move into the chairman's report, which should be relatively brief, I think. Commissioner McSweeney did give us an update on one of the things that may be coming off our March agenda, but I just want to have people hold the Thursday, March 7th, just kind of pencil that in. We may not need the third night, but just letting you know now, kind of how things shake out, we might need the third night. Sounds like with our kind of earlier discussions with staff, myself and Elizabeth Guerin, we kind of held that if everything went, and it sounds like that's not the case. So Commissioner Guerin and I are meeting with staff on Tuesday to plan March agenda, so we will have more for you soon. Okay, liaison assignments. So Ms. Johnson has passed out, or we should have sort of the updated kind of liaison assignments. There are some vacant ones, so NC, Park and Rec are certainly vacant. You don't have to tell me this evening if you want to do something else, but they remain unclaimed. So, yes, Commissioner Patel.
Actually, I have claimed Parks and Rec.
Okay.
Because I have a conflict with the Arts Commission night, so the Arts Commission is actually vacant.
Do I have the old version? No. Okay. Commissioner Patel. So arts, thank you for there's too many pieces of paper at our desk here. So arts is vacant, has it been corrected? And so is neighborhood conservation. So, but as we discussed earlier, we don't know how active they're going to be, given the sort of scale back funding. So again, let me and Ms. Johnson know if you want to do that. Also please include Ms. Bowling on email to us on that front. Any questions? All right. Pass this back to you. The last item I think on our agenda is approving the 2018 annual report. And we had some comments last time. Do people have any other kind of edits that we want to make before approving the 2018 report? The only thing I might note, Ms. Bowling, and this is just a formatting issue, the first page, the table of the commissioners kind of goes on to the next page with Commissioner Weir, and if there's any way to try to get all that on one page, it's confused at least one person at the dais, and so.
Okay. I'll look at that.
If we can figure that out. Yes, Commissioner McSweeney.
So I have I guess a question, or a clarification. I noted in the fourth paragraph that the Planning Commission hearings are streamed live online, along with the audio recordings are available on the Commission's website. The one person who I think watches our Planning Commission meetings has indicated to me for a few months that we are no longer televised. And so that is correct then. We are no longer televised, right? Okay. I'm happy to hear that. But we're on YouTube. Okay.
We're on live stream. Yeah, essentially. Yes, Commissioner Hughes.
So we should know that our ratings are down and we've been bumped from the programming. We should do something more controversial in the future.
Were they ever up, Commissioner Hughes?
We'll leave that to you, Commissioner
Any
Hughes.
other edits? Okay, well, hearing none. For our new commissioners, I think you can just abstain since you weren't here for last year. So can I have a motion, Commissioner Hughes?
I move the Planning Commission adopt its annual report for the year in 2018, dated February 4th, 2019.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Siegel. All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? Okay. All right, thank you. Do you have anything else, Commissioner? All right. Well, the Planning Commission stands adjourned. Until its March meeting.